Picture a woman named Gloria, 72 years old, retired 7 years ago from an administrative role at a regional hospital. Her husband, Tom, retired a year after she did. Between the two of them, they have Social Security, a modest pension from Tom's years at the county, and roughly $460,000 split between a traditional IRA and a savings account at the local credit union. The savings account alone holds just over $140,000. Gloria checks that savings balance the way some people check the weather, first thing in the morning, quietly, almost ritualistically. As long as that number stays above a certain line she has drawn in her head, she feels okay. Below it, a low hum of dread begins. And if stories like Gloria's feel familiar, this channel is here to break down the quiet financial risks most people never see coming. Consider subscribing so you can make smarter decisions before they become urgent ones. Now, back to Gloria. So they do not spend it. They heat the house a little less in February. They skipped replacing the 13-year-old dishwasher. They talked about visiting their daughter in Colorado last Thanksgiving, but decided the flights were too expensive, even though they could have covered it 3 times over without denting anything meaningful. Gloria and Tom are not poor. They are not struggling. But they are living as though the money in that account is the last money they will ever see. And the quietest part of this whole situation is that the way they are protecting themselves is slowly making things worse. What I have noticed about households like this, and there are far more of them than people realize, is that the danger does not look like danger. It looks like discipline. It looks like caution. It feels responsible. But there is a difference between maintaining a healthy emergency reserve and letting a fear of spending turn into a financial posture that actually erodes your position over time. Retirement surveys regularly find that a significant share of retirees spend less than they could safely afford, not because of careful planning, but because of anxiety. The instinct to hoard cash after 70 is deeply understandable. But when you look at the mechanics underneath it, the picture gets uncomfortable. Here is the first layer most people miss. Cash sitting in a standard savings account or a money market fund earns something, yes, but after taxes on the interest and after inflation, the real return is often negative or barely positive. $140,000 in savings today does not buy what it bought 5 years ago. Over a 10 or 15-year retirement window, that purchasing power loss is not trivial. It is not dramatic in any single month, which is exactly why it goes unnoticed. But retirement is not lived in single months. It is lived over decades. And a dollar that loses 2 or 3% of its real value every year for 15 years is not a safe dollar. It is a slowly shrinking one. The number on the screen stays steady or even climbs slightly, and that creates an illusion of stability. But what that dollar can actually do, pay for groceries, cover a medical copay, fix a roof, keeps fading. So the very thing Gloria watches every morning to feel secure is quietly becoming less capable of protecting her. Now, here is the second layer, and this is the one that tends to catch families off guard. While Gloria is guarding the cash she can see, the traditional IRA she is not thinking about much is still growing tax-deferred. And after a certain age, currently the early to mid-70s under the rules most retirees are navigating, required minimum distributions kick in. The IRS does not care whether Gloria needs the money. It does not care whether she wants the income. She is required to withdraw a calculated amount each year, and that withdrawal counts as taxable income. The longer she lets that IRA sit untouched, the larger it may grow, and the larger those required withdrawals become. A bigger RMD means more taxable income, which can push a retiree into a higher bracket, which can also increase the share of Social Security benefits subject to tax, and in some cases, push income above the thresholds where Medicare Part B and Part D premiums jump through what many planners refer to as IRMAA surcharges. Gloria is not spending the cash because she wants to feel safe, but by not spending strategically from the right accounts in the right order, she may be building a future year where her tax bill, her Medicare premiums, and her required withdrawals all spike at once, the opposite of safety. The interaction between these two forces is what makes the hoarding instinct so tricky. Inflation quietly weakens the cash pile. Deferred growth quietly inflates the tax bomb. And the retiree, watching only the savings balance, believes nothing is wrong. Firms like Fidelity and Vanguard have written at length about how withdrawal sequencing, the order in which you pull from taxable, tax-deferred, and tax-free accounts, can materially change how long a retirement portfolio lasts and how much of it goes to taxes over a lifetime. This is not an exotic strategy. It is a basic coordination problem. But most households never think about it because no one sends you a bill labeled "You withdrew from the wrong account this year." The cost is hidden. It shows up years later as a larger RMD, a higher premium, or a tax return that feels punishing despite a modest lifestyle. For a lot of households, the real issue is not that they lack resources. It is that they lack a structure for spending. When you are working, spending has a built-in rhythm. Paychecks come in, bills go out. What remains is flexible. In retirement, especially deep into retirement, that rhythm disappears. There is no paycheck anchoring anything. So the instinct becomes hold everything, spend nothing, wait for the emergency. But what if the emergency never comes in the form you expected? What if the real emergency is 15 years of underspending, followed by a forced tax event, followed by a health crisis at 85 when the purchasing power of that cash reserve has already been hollowed out? The safer approach, and many retirement researchers confirm this, is to build what I think of as a spending architecture. Know what your essential monthly costs actually are. Know which income sources cover them. Know which accounts should be drawn from in which years to stay within favorable tax brackets. And treat a reasonable cash reserve, perhaps 12 to 24 months of essential expenses, as the buffer, not the entire strategy. If something like this resonates, here is a grounded way to start. This week, take an honest look at where every dollar of household cash is actually sitting and what it is earning in real terms after inflation and taxes. Write down the total monthly obligations that do not flex: housing costs, insurance, prescriptions, property taxes, basic utilities. That is the floor. This month, pull up the most recent IRA or 401k statements and look at what required distributions might look like over the next few years. There are free RMD calculators available from most major brokerages. Compare that projected forced income against your current tax bracket and your Medicare premium thresholds. Even a rough sketch on paper can reveal whether a future collision is building. Over the coming year, consider whether a more intentional withdrawal rhythm, perhaps drawing a bit more from tax-deferred accounts now while income is lower and brackets are favorable, could reduce the pressure that stacks up later. This is not about spending recklessly. It is about spending with awareness so the system works in your favor instead of against it. Gloria, for what it is worth, did not change overnight. What shifted was the frame. Her daughter, after learning about withdrawal sequencing from a retirement planning workshop at her own employer, sat down with Gloria and Tom one weekend and walked through the numbers, not to scare them, but to show them what the next 10 years might look like under two approaches. One where they kept hoarding, one where they spent thoughtfully and drew from the right accounts at the right time. The totals at the end were not wildly different, but the taxes were. The Medicare costs were. And the lifestyle, the visiting, the dishwasher, the small dignities that make a retirement feel like something you actually earned, those were different too. The most conservative thing Gloria could do was not to grip the cash tighter. It was to let a little bit of structure replace a little bit of fear. That is not reckless. That is just a clearer way to protect what matters.